Hello everyone and welcome to my channel. My name is Amber and this is Fundie Freed. To get started today's topic is about purity culture, and I want to go ahead and put out trigger warnings for SA and CM and PA, because that may come up in my conversation and as I'm talking about this. This is your trigger warning. If this stuff like this really bothers you, please do not feel like you need to watch this. And so let's get started into our topic. Today we're going to touch on a pretty hot topic, which is purity culture. And purity culture is pretty ingrained in every aspect of evangelicalism and Christianity, and especially in the fundamental world. A lot of the representation you're going to see from that is, like abstinent purity rings, purity contracts, chastity rings. There's like so many things that you see, but I wanted to talk about my experience with purity culture, kind of how I see it. So, growing up independent fundamental Baptist, there is a different angle of purity culture that comes along with that. Everyone is very familiar with the Duggars. Duggars are independent fundamental Baptists, and they follow the Bill Gothard teachings. There's quite a few people I know that really went into Bill Gothard and the beliefs of the Duggars, and I will happily link those channels in here so you guys can look at those videos. Bill Gothard really put out a lot of damaging material and through pamphlets and through his preaching and his teaching, and it just kind of leaked down through all of his minions of ministers and harmed a lot of people. So the basis of purity culture, of course, is to keep oneself pure until they're married. And for many people, that just means complete abstinence till marriage. And in the Fundie world, that becomes more restricted to no dating, no kissing, no physical contact, no knowledge of anything in that realm whatsoever, like no education, no safety teachings, nothing. As a girl growing up in it, it is it's very detrimental, whether you're male or female, and each side has their own things. So for the boys, they are taught that they are basically sex crazed people, and that they must learn to control their impulses until they're married. And they slip up, confess your sins, say you're sorry, get right with God, and then you move on. So a lot of young men in the fundamental world and in the evangelical world do develop a porn addiction because it's easy access, and because of the lack of sex education in this world, they have a very skewed view of what an intimate relationship with their wife should look like. Women, we are taught that we have a very specific prize that is to be kept for our husbands and to be guarded by our fathers until we are married. Prize, of course, is our virginity. And any form of contact whatsoever can deem us impure. So if we hug someone, hold hands, if we are alone in the same room as someone of the opposite sex, that can taint our purity and the image that we're trying to keep. It's also very strongly taught that kids should be kept innocent until absolutely necessary, and so a lot of parents take it so far that they teach their children nothing about what goes on between a man and a woman once they're married until sometimes even the night before the wedding. So women go into this marriage not knowing anything basically of what is expected of them, and going from that to now they have to do all this performance. My dog is really jealous that I'm talking to you guys right now. It's a baby ducky. I had to put up a pillow to block her, because if not, she comes to my hands and starts licking my hands, and she always gets my attention. And so just now that you have kind of like an idea and a background of purity culture. I want to talk to you about how it played out in my lifetime. At a very, very, very young age. I mean, as early as I can remember. And I think the earliest that I can remember is about 4. Modesty was pushed on me very heavily because the responsibility of keeping men from lusting was put on the females. And so you start training girls from the time they are born to keep themselves covered up. I mean, I have seen families still in that world have their daughters as like newborns bundled from their toes to their necks so they're not showing off anything inappropriate, which to me is just disgusting. If you look at a baby like that, that's just, there's something wrong with you. I remember always wearing super long dresses and stuff under my dresses, so if my dresses came up, I was taught to make sure I sat like a lady. I never had my legs apart when I sat down. Crisscross applesauce if I was on the ground. Certain ways to kneel down, certain ways to stand up, so as to not to make yourself appealing.
So you bend and snap.
So I did all of these things. I followed all the rules. I kept myself completely modest and pure. But that didn't stop predators from doing what they did. This instance of CM was 4. It was reoccurring by a family member from about 8, 10, somewhere in there. I have a lot of dissociative amnesia, so it's really hard to remember a lot of things or remember timelines, but if I don't remember, I'll just be honest and I don't remember, but these are the pieces that come environment at a young age, and then told from the pulpit continuously, and sometimes even by my abuser from the pulpit, that any type of sexual immorality or sexual issue, sexual anything, made me impure. It meant there was something wrong with me. I was suddenly a broken toy. That seeped into my 4-year-old brain and 6-year-old brain and 9-year-old brain and 12-year-old brain. And it made me extra outward performative because I wanted to make up for the fact I was so damaged. And I don't know if it was because of purity culture or if it was because of my abuse or if it was a combination of both, but because relationships, even platonic relationships with the opposite sex, were very much discouraged, I began to perceive any type of physical contact from the opposite sex as sexual and as someone being attracted to me. So I'd find ways to go the extra mile and to jump as high as I needed to make the abuser happy, to keep myself safe. And so I went along with, even though in the back of my mind I knew there was something wrong with me, which of course I know now as an adult there was nothing wrong with me. I want to put that out there. But in the time I was like, there's something wrong with me. I'm just gross. And so threw myself into learning everything I could about the Bible. I learned all the books of the Bible faster than anyone in my class. I sang, I played the piano, I began performing my Christianity so I could keep up that appearance. As I grew, I remember at the age of 13 or so, I started developing a crush on this boy at my church, the church that we were in at the time. I remember writing in my diary about how cute he was, you know, what it'd be like maybe to kiss him, you know, just normal teenage stuff. My abuser broke into my diary and read everything that I had written down because they do not believe in this type of world. They don't believe there's any privacy for children whatsoever. And they punished me for having impure thoughts because I should not be thinking about that at my age. Ironic, because I've already experienced things that I should not experience at a young age, right? Or anyone should ever have to experience ever in their life. But I got in trouble. And that actually stunted a lot of my ability to journal, but that's like a whole different story. I can't really journal anymore because of the trauma of worrying about someone will find it. I was 16, 17, I think we're more like 17, someone in the next church we were in, we went to a lot of churches, someone was interested in me that was more conservative than my family, and I really liked him, and he wanted to court me, but it became this whole big ordeal because his family didn't think that he should court me until he knew for sure God wanted him to be with me, and so he wasn't even allowed to talk to me at all, like at all. And this went on for like a year and a half, 2 years. And actually I have a whole like little 3-minute video about that on TikTok that tells a little more about that story. But because I wanted so badly to be in this, I changed everything about, I changed myself even more. I became even more strict with myself, even stricter than what my parents were, because I wanted to be good enough for the family. It came out that I had kissed a boy before this guy was interested in me, and his mom flat out told me to my face that I was not good enough because I was impure, that her son wanted someone who had never been touched. And that hit on so many layers that I'm like, well, obviously the kissing thing was bad, but what about all this other issues underneath? What if he finds out about that? So, I mean, that just threw me into a bit of a tailspin, which then put me into another relationship at 19 where he was a preacher, and I thought I wanted to be with a preacher. I thought God had called me to be a preacher's wife, and he was also abusive. He was very mentally abusive. Advantage of the fact that I wanted it so badly and I was willing to do anything to be what he wanted, he let that play to his advantage, and that went on for another 2 years. Whenever I met my husband, we dated for about 6 months, engaged for 6 months, and we got married. And the only thing I could think about was making sure he knew that I was pure, so I just made up this story that I was riding a horse and and everything broke. And that's why everything was not there. Thankfully for me, my husband is not a typical fundamental husband. He is very a team player. He doesn't believe in having one person over the other. And so that was actually a hard concept for me. So anyway, so the day before I got married, my mom called me and she told me about what would happen after I got married, which I already knew because at that point, I actually moved out from my house and lived on my own for about a year or so. I would hear messages from the pulpit saying, if these young women you're interested in are working a job or they're out on their own, you better not touch them with a 10-foot pole because they are not in God's will. And here I am sitting with the youth group because I'm still technically in the youth group going, oh, well, not going to find a husband here because that's all me. It was there that the youth pastor started making advances on me in his house with his wife there. And he not touch me in inappropriate spots, but he would just touch me, and basically he was grooming me to his advantage. But in the midst of that is whenever I started dating my husband and I started going to the church with my soon-to-be husband at the time, and I got away from that. After I got married, the advice that I was given was, you do your duty, even if you don't feel like it, but it is your duty to please your husband. So if you're not into it, just pretend like you are. The better you pretend, the faster it's over with. So that's the advice I went into my marriage with. I carried myself that way. Even if I wasn't in the mood at the time, I would still pretend like I was until one day my husband never knew. He never expected of me to do that, ever. I just want to put that out there. Something triggered me and I just broke down. And then I finally told him everything that had happened to me growing up. He was compassionate. He held me. He loved me. He's like, if you ever feel uncomfortable, please tell me. Then, I don't expect anything of you that you're not comfortable with, which was amazing. What's funny is even after being out of that mindset for so long, back in 2021, I was S8 at my job, and that purity culture mindset kicked in and was automatically like, you know, if you weren't wearing jeans, he wouldn't have been lusting after you and it wouldn't have happened. And the other thing that would go through my head was if you were at home where you were supposed to be doing your duty, this wouldn't have happened. So even after all of the deconstruction, it's still very much in me, but I have to work to calm that voice down and just kind of muffle it out. Purity culture really makes me angry because why, as a child, was it my job to keep a man's thoughts pure? And that's the problem with purity culture. They put it all on the females, that you dress a certain way, you walk a certain way, you talk a certain way, you act a certain way. That way you do not stir up lust in a man. And the problem is we're all sexual beings. Men are going to think what they think if they're that kind of way, just like women are going to think what they think if they're that kind of way. And no amount of clothing protected me. No amount of trying to keep innocence and keeping me sheltered and protected protected me. And trying to keep me from knowing about things did not protect me. Because what it did is it made me naive and allowed me to get into positions as I got older to where people could take advantage of me or I didn't realize that they were being inappropriate or being gross or being nasty, and I just had no concept. And so they got away with so much with me because I just didn't know. And I think if you want to teach your kids abstinence, it's fantastic. Go ahead, do that. Do what you feel like you need to do with your kids, but do not hide them from everything. Sheltering them and keeping them from the evils of the world is more harmful than talking to them and having open conversations with them about what they're going to be facing. Yeah, tell them, you know, it's really smart to wait until you're much older to have these type of relations. You know, personally, I would prefer you wait till you're married, but it doesn't mean it's going to happen. So if it doesn't happen, these are the steps that we have in place to protect you. We have options, access to birth control. We have access to other types of contraceptives. So that way, they know how to handle themselves whenever they get into situations, and they're not afraid to come to me and say, hey, I did this. What can I do to keep me safe? And that goes with any type of situation, really. It's not just in purity culture. It's protecting your kids from so much that you almost unintentionally put them in harm's way because they don't know how to handle themselves in situations. So as now a parent, as an adult with my kids, I have open conversations about everything with them, from intimate relationships, and of course it's all age appropriate, intimate relationships, drugs, alcohol, to handle certain types of relationships, total bodily autonomy. We have these conversations because I want them to not go into this world not knowing how to protect themselves. Because no, I'm not always going to be there, and my husband and I do not own them, and they do not stay under our headship until they're married. And this is just from my point of view, but I mean, at the end of the day, purity culture is so damaging, and it sets up great precedents for spousal abuse and the R word. And it teaches men that they don't have to control themselves, because once they're married, they can do whatever they want. And it teaches women they have to have complete control until they're married, and they have to be everything their husband wants. It's just a gross idea. I hope as more videos like this come out and more Christians start talking out about the dangers of purity culture, we start seeing it diminish in the generations after ours, because the damage is already done to us. But what we can do now is we can save the generation after us and the one after us, and obliterate the ideology of purity culture and to protect our kids from it. Thank you so much for listening today. I hope you liked my video. If you stayed this long, I really super appreciate it. If you would like to share your own story, or if you have any memes or videos or anything you would like for me to react to, please follow the directions in the description box below, and I will be able to get those, and I will use those for a video in the coming months for sure. If you like the content I'm creating and you look forward to see what comes next, don't forget to subscribe, click the bell for notifications, and like this video. If you have any feedback or anything you'd like for me to talk about, until next time, all of my friends, remember, everyone has a story. What is yours?